Massachusetts chapter of SIOR. So welcome to our, I believe it's our 9th weekly SIOR commercial real estate chat series. And this afternoon we have a great panel assembled to talk about construction and design. And Tom Pagelik will be moderating the discussion. So again, welcome to all members, sponsors, real estate and business professionals, and members of the press, if any are on. We've had them on in the past. So before I turn things over to Tom, I wanted to acknowledge all our annual sponsors who are listed at the bottom of our invites, which everybody has seen several times. But here we go. Bank of America, CIC, Community Investment Corporation, Claris Construction, Declare Office Group, Godfrey Hoffman Associates, McDermott, Reynolds and Glissman, RD Cinto, Petra Construction, and we do have Guido Petra as one of the members of our panel this afternoon. 10X, Savings Bank of Danbury, and PES Structural Engineers, and Dave Brownell from PES is also on our panel. So our format, most of you have participated in our sessions in the past. It's same format. We have the chat function for questions and interaction. And once again, the session's going to be recorded and it'll be up on the website early next week at the latest. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Tom and the panel, and we'll get rolling.
Thank you, Art. Welcome, everybody. Tom Pagelik, CBRE, out of Stanford. And this week, we're going to be talking about construction and design in light of current circumstances and marketplaces that we work in. These last couple of months have posed quite significant challenges for a lot of us. And I think today we have a panel of experts who come from within our own ranks within SIOR that have some very interesting perspectives as to how they've been approaching and dealing with issues that have popped up. And we're hoping that you get a lot out of this because I think we have a lot to offer based on our pre-call that we've had so far. The order of events is we're going to start with Paolo Campos from Patriquin Architects, Paolo. Paolo is on the front line in designing spaces and that inspire confidence and well-being for tenants and users, not to mention efficiency. From there, we're going to have Tom Proietti from Flowtech Engineering to talk about how to commission buildings in such a way to deal with today's issues. Guido Petra from Petra Construction will be our next speaker. And Guido will talk about current issues surrounding construction in today's environment. And then batting cleanup, we have David Brownell from PES Structural Engineers. David's going to address local, regional, and national trends that they have seen in light of the last couple of months and make some predictions as to where we're going. So Paolo, before I go any further, I'm going to just pass this off to you. And we would like you to put your questions in a chat format. We will deal with questions at the end of the presentation. So, but we are paying attention. All righty. Thank you, Paolo. Over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tom. Hope everybody can hear me and see my screen. Thank you, SIOR, for inviting me today to take part in this panel. And thank you to everybody in the audience for joining us today. I hope you find what we're going to talk about today to be informative and helpful. First, I want to ask, is anybody else sick of this graphic of this virus? We were talking earlier about this, and yeah, thank you, David. Really can't wait to have this behind us. But a little bit about me. So I have a lot of initials after my name. So AIA and NOMA. So the American Institute of Architects. That means that I'm a licensed architect and I pay dues to a national and state chapter of the American Institute of Architects. And I'm also a member of the National Organization of Minority Architects. So a group that stands for diversity and equity in design and construction. A lot of school. I went to 7 years of college and graduate school. Graduated in 2001 and 2006. Served a long apprenticeship working at Centerbrook Architects. I became licensed in 2010 and have since been practicing mostly in the state of Connecticut, but a few jaunts out of the state as well. I hold an NCARB certificate, and NCARB means the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. That means I can get licensed in almost any state in the union, except for California, where I have to take a few additional tests on earthquakes. I joined Patriquin Architects in 2016, and I'm happy to say that it has been a very productive time for us. We were founded in 2010 by Karen Patriquin. She's standing there on the right of the image there. We are a minority business enterprise as registered with the state of Connecticut. And our core practice areas are multifamily housing, both in affordable and market rates. A lot of educational work, both in early childhood and kind of K through 12 markets. Commercial, and that means office, corporate, restaurants, medical, spas, that sort of thing. And the unusual and the difficult or the offbeat. We're a firm that we've won a lot of awards for design excellence, but more importantly for teamwork, working within a large group under tight constraints, and for sustainability. And that's a term that is interesting today in light of what we're going to talk about. So some of our favorite projects, again, some school projects that I show here on the top left and bottom right. On the bottom left is a corporate office in Stamford. We have a couple of housing projects. This was one in New Haven, right across the Quinnipiac River from our office. Again, this is one of those med spa fit out office projects in a very unusual spot in Guilford. And then a large restaurant in New Haven, Connecticut. It's in a historic building. And I mentioned the unusual and challenging ones. This is once in a lifetime, well, maybe not. It's an oyster farm, of all things, in the shores of Quinnipiac River in New Haven. The geek in me loves this project. We're spawning baby oysters, putting them on shells, growing them up until they can live out Long Island Sound and then be harvested a few years later. So it's kind of an industrial production, aquaculture operation. Challenges are many, 21st century operation, monitoring water quality and all sorts of stuff. It's in a historic district, which is a difficulty in and of itself. It's in a flood zone, so nothing's easy about it. I finish with this project specifically because I hate to say in March, it went on hiatus. We were going through city approvals, but this owner makes their money by selling oysters to restaurants across the country. Once things closed in March, they stopped moving product. That meant revenue stopped coming in. And so our project went on hold. Not a story that sadly is unheard of these days. So, let's be honest, we may never have a full accounting of what this virus has cost us as a society. If you think about sort of the blood and treasure costs. By and large, I'd like to say that here in the tri-state region, we've really stepped up at these challenges thrown at us, and we've done the best we could with the information we have on hand. And I also want to take a moment to just thank and acknowledge the people who couldn't stay home during all of this. They had to keep going to work in the face of the virus and all the sort of bad, scary news that it was creating. I don't have words to convey how thankful I am for those people. This is medical workers, grocery workers, the last mile delivery people. Just an awesome job all around. So this has been a huge cause of stress for everybody. I'm showing here a graphic from something called the Architectural Billing Index. And I don't know if anybody knows about this, so I'll talk about it very briefly. The ABI is something that's run by the American Institute of Architects. It's kind of a monthly poll of member firms, large and small, across the country. And it really focuses on non-residential construction. So anything related to office buildings, office parks, industrial, factory, institutional projects gets covered in this. Basically, it's how much billings, how much are we invoicing to clients on a monthly basis? It's really been used by a lot of institutions like Wells Fargo, a lot of media outlets as a sort of bellwether for the economy, or in bad times, it's the sort of canary in the coal mine. And that makes sense in a way. We architects, we engineers design things, it gets put out to bid, contractors do their thing, and it's kind of the whole cycle. We're the first harbinger of good or bad news. And at the end of 2019, you can kind of see things were going well. In the bottom right corner there, it says the year ends on a strong note for firms. Billings continue expanding in early 2020. And, February 2020, solid business performance, things began to change in February and in March. And I'll be honest with you, the news is not good. There's no sugarcoating it. In March 2020, the billings plummeted at rates that have not been seen before. And this is going back to the Great Recession of 2008 and other recessions. March and April were horrific for our industry. And, some people have done okay, glad to say, ourselves somewhat included. We could be better, sure, so could everybody. We'll see what happens in May and June. The numbers for May are actually due out later today. So hopefully there was a temporary blip. This is not indicative of any structural problems in our economy. It's really indicative of this freak virus. So hopefully things turn around. All right, so here we are. We're entering week 2 of the official phase 2 of Connecticut's reopening. I was asked by the people on this panel to talk about what designers are sort of reading in the tea leaves here. What have we learned along the way that is going to help keep this reopening proceeding safely, but still on the right track? This is an interesting question in light of the recent stats and trends that we're seeing in New England and the tri-state area, which, knock on wood, are positive at this point, but not so good, certainly down south, where we're seeing spikes and the wave is still on the upswing. So ultimately, I think this comes down to consumer confidence. At the end of the day, my products, contractors' products, are the buildings that we live and work in. And so we need to create confidence that consumers, people who live, work in these buildings, feel safe coming to work and living in them. So how do we do that? And that's kind of the big question. Well, So we've seen a lot of these diagrams recently. Clients are asking us to look at how do they adjust their operations, and looking at changing traffic flows to one way, in, out, and through various spaces, whether it's a large office block like you see on the right, or a smaller office building on the left. Where do privacy partitions or hand sanitizing stations go? These diagrams are everywhere now. We've done several of them for offices, for restaurants, and for shopping centers ourselves, and lots of other architects have published very similar diagrams. I'll relay a personal experience here. My daughter is a competitive gymnast. She goes to a gym in Wallingford right off of 91. Her gym had to close down, which kills the coaches. And they jumped on the reopening bandwagon like that. They had us ready to go as soon as we could legally, but they had to completely reinvent how things worked. Pick up, drop off, getting into the gym, what practice looks like. And so before COVID, everybody parked in front here and used the one front door. It was like the social hour, right? All the parents saying hi, all the kids saying hi, dropping their stuff off, going into the gym. There was a back alley with a door to out of the back of the gym that was there because of code. The fire marshal wants it, but nobody ever went back there. That's on the bottom left there. Well, today everybody has to go back there. So there's a really stringent drop-off process. The girls queue in a single file line, spaced 6 feet apart, wearing masks. They get their temperatures checked. They go into the gym, they hand sanitize. They have to be, maintain a certain distance inside the gym. Coaches wear masks, gloves. Then everybody goes out again, single file, to a queuing line in the back for pickup at the end of practice. Right, so what? We've made a lot of changes in our routine, added these layers of protection. That's all well and good, but does that really get at the consumer confidence thing? I'll be honest, all of this reducing the number of people in the offices, making your hallways one way, having a Purell station every 10 feet, these really feel more like Band-Aids, right? They're not long-term solutions here. What can we do as designers, as contractors, as building owners and operators that make people feel good about going back to work again, not feeling like they're going to be at risk, interacting with their peers and their coworkers, doing business, making the economic engine go again? So that's where I want to talk about what we've seen in our office and what we're implementing. And that's, before COVID struck, wellness was a buzzword that we saw a lot, not just in architecture or construction, but across the board. Wellness is a state of mind, sure. There's models of wellness that talk about all of these items that you see here on the screen: intellectual, emotional, physical, social, occupational, financial, environmental, spiritual. All right. So my hypothesis, or our hypothesis, is that buildings can contribute in a positive or negative way to almost all of these elements. So that's great. Fortunately, I'm not making this up. There's a lot of green building standards that are out there. And three that have really caught on to our radars recently are these three that you see here. So the WELL building standard, Fitwell, and Reset. These are like LEED. All of you have heard of LEED before, I hope so. It's point-based, so as a design team, you implement certain strategies. As a construction team, you see those strategies built. As an owner-operator, you keep those things moving. But the difference between these standards and others is that these don't really care about building efficiency and carbon footprint. They really care about what impact does the building have on the health, wellness of people who live in the building. I'm going to just talk about these at a very high level and not get into specifics, but long story short, WELL buildings are healthier buildings. Fitwell buildings are healthier buildings. And this is something that is done using proven evidence-based strategies. So, and they kind of do this by having a whole series of different categories and core concepts. So WELL has 10 of them. Fitwell has 7. Reset has 4. But all of these things are based on strategies that it's not just my intuition as a designer saying that the water strategies will make you better. No, this is based on literature, published statistics, research by people like the Mayo Clinic, Delos, various Ivy League schools of public health. This is smart minds studying this stuff and saying that we're gathering information that shows, yes, it does have a beneficial impact. So, all right, we're not going to make all of our buildings well. We're not going to make all of our buildings fit well. But at COVID, can we implement some of these things in our existing buildings? And a lot of these guys, so WELL has published a white paper that says, here are the strategies that we recommend we implement now where we can. So, all right, number 1, clean contact. And my office has done some of these in the last couple of months. So what does that mean? Improved hand washing. We've all heard about washing your hands for 20 seconds. Different, more rigorous cleaning protocols. So we as a group, we've had clients that say, hey, can we convert some of our casework to have more hand sinks in them or have more hand sanitizing stations there? What are areas that we need to look at with our cleaning crews? What are the high touch, high traffic areas beyond just the usual? There might be some surprising things that you think about everybody's computers, but the common equipment in conference rooms and meeting rooms. What are the tools and the chemicals you're using to clean? Are they still safe? Or are they going to have another impact later on? A free hint, don't ingest bleach. I'm going to start handing off the baton here to Tom, who's going to talk about some of this stuff, especially on the HVAC side. But another strategy that WELL is looking at is improving air quality in our buildings. And this makes a lot of sense too. If you think about most of your offices, you're sitting in a place where with the VRV systems, you're just kind of sitting in a pool of recirculated air. And that's not good. That's how the virus seems to be spreading. So reducing stagnation of air, getting rid of dust, getting rid of viruses or places where the virus can kind of build up. So better ventilation, enhanced ventilation, treatment of air to kill viruses and other things. Operable windows, another big one. These are all things that we can retrofit our existing building stock, not easily in some cases, but it is still doable. And at the end of the day, these are things that are, kind of core and measurable to WELL or Fitwell. They're not going to replace vaccines or some kind of herd immunity. But kind of, I guess what I would submit to this group is that if we can layer these elements into our design and construction practices and our operations practices, we're going to begin to restore that consumer confidence. People will feel better about returning to a building that has had this improved ventilation system put in place. That's going to help us get back to normal faster than we would otherwise. So with that, thank you. I'm happy to take questions later on. I'm going to hand it off to Tom, who's going to talk about his thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Paolo. I hope everyone can hear me.
We're good.
Okay, good. So great segue. I'd like to open with a quote. Healthy buildings are not expensive. Sick people are really expensive. That is a quote from Professor Joe Allen at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. He has, I recommend following him on LinkedIn or wherever you can find him. He has led a group, been pioneering healthy buildings since before 2015, specifically with a COG-FX study. This was a study that was published. There are actually 3 studies. The first one was released in October of 2015, providing proof that air equivalent to green certified buildings offered improved cognitive function. They were actually able to test how people's cognitive function responded to the air quality in the space. And they did that in a laboratory environment at a facility in Syracuse, New York. And then beyond that, they've gone actually out into multiple buildings. The second study was done and actually promoted what they coined a term called buildingomics, and the ability to optimize buildings for cognitive function and health. And the third study has gone worldwide, but the collection of data they have is significant, and the studies are significant and point right at the features that Paolo mentioned with regard to well and fit well in terms of healthy buildings and healthy spaces for people. So, having mentioned well and fit well in healthy buildings, the question is, will owners and tenants see certification of this type of healthy space as a premium? That's always the question in the marketplace. Will the tenants be confident enough to come back, and will my space that I've gone to the trouble to make healthy be scooped up first, or even better, collect a better premium? We believe so, and COVID has forced the issue, I think, more than anything else in my lifetime. So how do we go about this? Well, I offer up this. You can't fix what you don't measure. And let me segue from that for a moment into who I am and what we do. I'm a sales representative for Flowtech. Flowtech is a not a typical full service manufacturer's representative house, primarily for HVAC components. And everything that we handle has to do with the management of air. We service hospital, biopharma, commercial, educational, higher educational spaces, pretty much across the board, with the exception of some industrial spaces. We also deal with water and wastewater in terms of pumping applications with the ABB drives. But everything we handle essentially goes to the efficient process of air in a building. And I am the indoor air quality specialist at Flowtech for the last 15 years, helping people deal with measuring what's going on in the air and helping to mitigate for potential problems with air quality. So again, you can't fix what you don't measure. When you start talking about new buildings and renovations to existing space, that's an easy time and an optimal time to build in systems, many of the systems referred to by Paolo in terms of better air quality. One of the things that we suggest is that CO2 alone is not enough. the demand control schemes driven by CO2 as a measurement, as a proxy for how many people are in the space and how much fresh air we need, isn't getting the job done. It's not proving to be the best method. What is suggested, especially as well and Fitwell come out, is measurement of other parameters like total volatile organic compounds, or commonly referred to as TVOCs, and particulates. These are things that we used to only measure in laboratory or clean room type spaces, but now to actually look at all of these parameters for even commercial spaces, and especially spaces where people might gather, like conference rooms, that sort of thing. If you have fewer spaces, it's easier to measure those multiple parameters with a few individual, or what we call discrete sensors. But if you have many spaces, you might want to look at a centralized sensing system where you have a centralized sensor and air sampling is multiplexed.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Should I slow down maybe? Does that help?
So that sounded good.
Okay. So if you have many spaces, centralized sensing provides better sensing capabilities with a central sensing location and multiplexing that across many spaces. So a multi-parameter, what we would refer to as a multi-parameter demand control ventilation scheme, can provide for you to manage more fresh air and still optimize for energy. That's something we suggest you factor into the design and allow for better use of fresh air dilution. For existing buildings and for assurance of tenant renewals, it's not so easy to just redesign a space, but there are things that can be done. One of the things that we suggest right out from the start, again, you can't fix what you don't measure. So the best way is to start with building commissioning. What do people actually know how much outdoor air is coming in? Do they have airflow measuring stations? Or how long has it been since those have been commissioned or recalibrated? So there are also, from the utility companies, UI and Eversource, potentially incentives to look at wet commissioning and building space. So it's always a good idea for existing space to look at potential commissioning, recommissioning, to see what exactly you have, and then you know what needs to be fixed. The other thing we recommend is an ASHRAE position paper. It's worth examining, that just came out in the middle of April. Those of you familiar with ASHRAE, that's the certifying group for mechanical engineering groups. Their recommendations, and I believe Bernadette was putting up a link to this paper. You can find it. If not, my contact information is available, and I'll get it to you. But their recommendations go to specifically, again, a repeat, pollution ventilation. The solution to pollution is dilution. Making sure that you're getting more fresh air, and if your outside air isn't fresh, you need to know that. Again, it needs to be measured. But more supply air that provides the ability to optimize out the quality of the air in the space. You also want to examine airflow patterns. Does the initial design of that space been challenged by new walls or retrofitting of equipment that cause stratification in the space, and it's not making airflow work very well? That's something that can be examined along with commissioning process. Would some spaces benefit from a pressurization, similar to a laboratory airflow control scheme, where it's a negative space where you're not allowing what's going on in that space to contaminate spaces around it? Again, this used to only be considered in critical airflow control schemes. But again, with COVID, there may be spaces in your building you want to adjust for that.
Can
They also
you get a
recommend.
little closer to the, can you get a little closer to the computer while you're speaking? You're a little choppy on the audio.
Okay.
That much better.
Okay. They also recommend adjusting temperature and humidity, and more specifically, management of dew point. The recommendation from ASHRAE is that a 40 to 60% humidity level is recommended for optimal control of viral aerosols. It's pretty common knowledge that viral aerosols tend to survive longer and can last in an airstream longer if it's very dry. The other recommendation is increased filtration. And we cannot recommend ad hoc addition of increased filtration. This needs to be evaluated against your existing fan, heating, and cooling capacity. So you need to work with your mechanical contractors, you need to work with your commissioning specialists to look at what are the capacities of the HVAC system before you start cooking it down with additional filtration. And one of the very common recommendations, and one that I have been championing for nigh on 15 years, is ultraviolet germicidal irradiation. We've been promoting this for the sanitization of cooling coils for a long time. This came about essentially as a reaction to Legionnaire's disease many, many years ago. And the idea is if you take sunlight in a specific band, that being ultraviolet C-band light, and shine it on a cooling coil, you can sanitize that coil and mitigate for a pathogen reservoir that typically is responsible for biocides and bacteria and fungal particles being pushed out into space, many times past filtration, because no filtration product is 100%. The good news is a ultraviolet germicidal irradiation array that is built to a standard to sanitize a 6 or 8 row cooling coil has enough UV energy to also deactivate 90+% of any potential viral aerosols coming through the air handling unit. And the best place to get those with a UV light is when the air is moving the slowest, is within that air handling unit. Putting the UV in the ductwork requires a lot of UV energy because of the speed of the air. So UV is a very simple science, very easy retrofit, relatively low cost. And once the COVID scare or viral problem of the year is gone, you have continuous sanitization of the coils, which also provides multiple mechanical, energy, and maintenance benefits in terms of the efficiency of the coil performing as new in its delta T across that coil, and in the air passing through the coil in a nice clean coil with fan energy, and the mitigation of any need to mechanically clean that coil because the UV is constantly sanitizing it. So those are some quick, helpful hints. Flowtech is a company that operates pretty far down the food chain, but typically we work with the mechanical, electrical, and controls or building management system type folks within the contracting tiers to make sure that even as part of the design process that whatever gets designed is something that will work, something that can be maintained efficiently. And we also have a full service component of folks to work with end users to make sure that it continues to work and can be serviced going forward. So if I leave you with anything, please remember, you can't fix what you don't measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Quick question for you, just real quick, from a standpoint of a cost premium associated with some of these different strategies and tactics. I mean, LEED cost money to accomplish back when we were, everybody was trying to strive toward LEED energy efficiency type buildings. What would an owner or perhaps a tenant might they expect to spend as a premium associated with some of these different technologies that you've described?
That's across the board. It depends on the size of the building, the size of the equipment, how old, how new, what measurement capacities do they have. These are engineered solutions, and to throw a dollar at it right now is not a fair estimation.
Okay, fair response. Guido, you have to build all this.
Yep, thank you. And we're giving it a try. Thank you, SIOR, for the invitation and to be a panelist today. Thank you, Paolo and Tom. I've had the pleasure of working with Flowtech and Patriquin Architects. They're great firms to do business with. Petra Construction has been in business for 67 years, performing work throughout the New England states. For the past few years, all of our work has been focused in the state of Connecticut. We're an open shop company. Petra employs currently 86 people. We service private sector, performing both renovation and new out of the ground construction. Our clients include Fortune 500 companies, hospitals, private schools, colleges, and universities, big pharma, biotech, industrial, and manufacturing. In March of this year, the Connecticut construction industry began to feel the impact of COVID-19. Given that construction was declared an essential business, Petra remained fully operational with about 60% of our office staff working remotely and a reduced field staff keeping whatever jobs that were not shut down working. Since March, construction companies throughout the state have had state projects, federal projects, and private sector projects either canceled or delayed as a result of the pandemic. On the good news front, many of the delayed projects that were in progress prior to the pandemic have been reactivated, and that's good news for the construction industry. However, we are seeing, and this is important for the listeners, we are definitely seeing a hesitation, and it goes back to what Paolo was showing us, a hesitation on behalf of the owners that were planning on starting a project this summer or this fall. And as a result of that hesitation and the mixed economic signals on a national level, contractors throughout the country are concerned about their ability to secure future work, referred to as backlog in our industry. Now, technically, that should evolve into a more competitive environment and reduction in construction costs. However, it's going to be offset by the obvious issues that we're talking about today, being a pandemic. So one of our many challenges in the construction industry is trying to keep up with the latest health and safety requirements. I literally have people on today, at least 30 people on a roof for Yale University, one of their historic buildings, and we're replacing a roof that has to be completed by the start of the school year. So we're working long shifts in this heat, and you can imagine being on a roof on a day like today, not only with a hard hat, but with a mask and a full face shield. So we're getting and safety glasses. So if we're lucky, if we get 4 to 5 hours a day out of productivity out of a man, but you can't, out of a construction worker, but you can't really blame them for given the working environment. Our clients are requiring us to develop and follow what's called site-specific health and safety plans on our projects. And because no two projects are alike, these plans are difficult to develop. They're all unique specific to each project. And some of these get into 70, 80 pages in length with plans how to get into a building, out of a building, and all the safety protocol is required. And it also applies to the space users, the occupants, the visitors, and the owners. So these protocols are easier said than done to develop because we're dealing with CDC We're dealing with the state of Connecticut. We're dealing with OSHA. Just to name a few of the major players that are dishing out almost on a daily basis new rules and regulations that we have to follow as a construction company performing work. The problem with all those jurisdicting agencies is the fact that many of their rulings contradict one another. So we have to try to figure out, okay, which one are we supposed to follow? And which entity are we going to risk getting in trouble with because we're not following their regulations to a T? So it's a big challenge, and it's a lot of work to keep up with, and it costs money. As a result of the pandemic, we're beginning to see technologies for project monitoring and project management lessen the need to physically be on site, which is encouraging. Remote meetings and communication, cloud-based software. While that's not new to the audience here, the adoption and exclusive use in the construction industry has been very slow, historically has been slow. However, companies that do not comply are going to be left on the sidelines because it's here and now, and it's definitely the future. Some good news on the building permit application front for those of you that are in the middle of trying to wrangle that. Most of the cities and large towns in Connecticut have gone to allow electronic filing, actually requiring it, which is making the process a lot easier, a lot smoother. And it's the small towns are beginning to adopt that, but they have, issues trying to get their IT departments to really accommodate the needs for a contractor to upload 150 drawings onto one of their sites and allow the building inspector to be able to go through those drawings and issue a building permit, fire marshals as well. In some jurisdictions, building department inspections are being performed electronically, which is encouraging as well. And we're using videos and we're using photo documentation to expedite that, and it's working well. Third-party inspections are also becoming more and more commonplace. So for those projects that have been reactivated, their durations and costs are on the rise due to slower progress, slower productivity in the field, as well as disruptions in the supply chains. Got some projects that are being delayed as a result of light fixture delays, some HVAC equipment where the sourcing of some of the parts are from overseas or from factories that have been severely disrupted by the COVID. Those particular items are being delayed and delaying the project, which creates a myriad of issues. The challenges are coming from all angles, and the industry is scrambling to figure out how to ease the impact and how to do damage control, but we're up for it, and everyone is in the same boat, which is the only good news. While most construction companies are busy now building pre-COVID projects, future projects really remain unpredictable. What we do know is that future construction projects will be performed differently, and what I mean by future, it's not only now, but it's the gradual change over time. I would say maybe within the next 5 years. Many of our construction office workers will be working perhaps remotely. There's going to definitely be an increase in interest and an emphasis on modular construction. Prefabrication of building components is definitely going to benefit from this. All those items are going to become more commonplace to reduce the number of construction workers in the field. New technologies and construction methods are going to take priority in the near future because labor costs continue to go up, and the way the future labor is going to have to work, and at least in the near future until we get a vaccine, it's going to drive the cost of labor higher and higher. So, to wrap up, the real estate sector folks that are on the call here, there's going to be an increase in the cost of construction. And before Tom asks me how much, I'm going to I'm going to take a guess here and venture to say all items being equal pre-COVID versus COVID, it's probably an uptick of anywhere from 5 to 8% in the cost of construction that one can expect, and that has a lot to do with just how far is an owner willing to go into the wellness that Paolo and Tom were speaking of. And there's going to be longer construction durations. So for that 5,000 square foot office floor plate that was a minor office renovation that perhaps you were anticipating going to take 60 days, well, that's not going to take 90 days. So be careful there on your commitments. Retrofitting of office and retail spaces to address the health and wellness of space users is going to be on the increase. Renovation of healthcare spaces to address phase 2 of the next pandemic is already in the works, and it's going to be an uptick in that as well. We've experienced an uptick in activity for repurposing of retail space into healthcare related use. So that could be an avenue that you may want to look into. Ditto with warehouse space for the stockpiling of medical supplies is also active. We're experiencing an increase in volume in the pharmaceutical, I'm speaking Connecticut now, pharmaceutical, biotech, university, and medical school laboratory work. We currently have ongoing projects right now for Pfizer, Alexion, Arvinas, GlaxoSmithKline, Yale University, and Yale School of Medicine, all laboratory related research, R&D, hurry up and get it done type projects. So, there is definitely work generated from directly related to the COVID in those arenas. I don't want to take up any more time because I want to give David an opportunity here to add to the conversation today. Thank you.
And nice job, Guido. Thank you. And you did head me off at the pass there. My cost question. So, David, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure how much more I can really say, except I'll start off by saying I don't really have a crystal ball. I actually listen to a lot of people. I have a lot of contacts. I talk to owners, developers, architects, engineers, contractors. I talk to everybody and try and get a good feel for really what's going on the ground. And I want to pick up on something that Guido was talking about, and I know Paolo has heard me say this many times, is that in all through American history, in times of great tragedy, great innovation comes from that. And I think we're seeing that right now. And he's talking a little bit about the biotech and the hurry up to get a vaccine or therapeutics out there, or how we're all working at what's going to happen in space. So I think this is just the way it is. And I'm actually excited. I'm the true optimist to see what's really going to come away from all of this. So, some trends, and, Paolo started off with this, and I'm going to go back a little bit further because I want to look at history, and I go back to 2008. Right now, last month, if we look at the ABI, it dropped all the way to 29.5. And he is correct. It's probably the lowest number it's been. If we go back to, I think it was December of 2008, where it was still running around 31 or 32. And most of the firms I talk to right now are really quite concerned what we're about to see when the new number comes out today or possibly tomorrow. We have to remember that construction and building occupancy from all of that lags by about 18 to 36 months if we're talking about typical design and large scale projects. So that's really kind of the concern in the marketplace. So I try to print this all pretty much into one slide just to make it easy. And I'm not going to go through every one with detail because I don't think I have time for that. But the ones that are in yellow are the ones that PS Structural kind of focus on overall, but definitely in the Connecticut market. So these are things that are in play. I call it probable positives because we're in such a fluid situation with COVID-19 and what's going to happen next. Right now, and I'm going to allude to this in a moment, in Southern New England, Metro New York, and New Jersey, we are in a position that's much better than other places in the country. I don't think anybody would debate that. We went through a lot. We went through hell. We've learned a lot. And we're now in a position to coexist with this virus and to maintain and hopefully build on the future. So, you know, as Guido was talking about biotech and what's going on, I'm not going to go back to that. He also talked about, you know, interior work, corporate interiors. We talk about redoing workspace, one way, how's the space best used. A lot of people I talk to, K-12 independent schools, still moving forward. Heard last night about the city of Torrington going out to referendum on a high school that should cost about a mere $156 million. The energy sector is interesting as it's not doing well, but with renewable energy and the needs in that market, it's still in play. So here's the interesting thing for all of us in the industrial side. Food services, industrial, warehousing, logistics, distribution, manufacturing, data, technology, and I'll go all the way down to supply chain. That's almost an easy one to pick because of what we saw happen during COVID. Supply chain needs a lot of work, and there was already a lot of people focused on that even prior to. And we happen to work with a lot of people in those sectors. So that's actually kind of simple. On the other side, what I call the possible negatives. And once again, I say possible because this could all change quickly. I'm really praying and hoping that we don't see things get so bad in those 22, 23 southern and southwestern states, but we have to be prepared for that. So the financial sector, we had a couple facilities, in other parts of New England that were supposed to be done. They got put on hold. We don't know if they're going to come back, as Guido was alluding to. We have a huge hospitality client out of Atlanta. Their hospitality studio is pretty much decimated right now. And that's a sector that's probably, not really going to come back for 2 to 5 years would be the best guess. But we're seeing the smaller type of hospitality chains that are moving forward with design and construction, which is kind of strange. And then mixed use only because it falls over in that retail side of things. I go back to the positives. You'll notice I put retail automotive. That's a hot market right now. And I can say this because PS Structural, we're a national firm and we have projects all over the place. And if you go to our website later, you'll see an article I did on a virtual site visit for AutoNation, which is the largest retail auto supplier in the country. And right now we're underway with 25 different projects, for that one company. And then online services, that would be Amazon. Amazon has an expected big expansion in Windsor and a lot of last mile locations that they're still in play, and they're looking to hire a lot of people. So I don't look at it as secrets. I mean, if we all pay attention to what the market is telling us and where things are going, this is pretty much it, for now. Multifamily, though, I want to say surprisingly is still incredibly strong, and nothing has really stopped. Like everybody else, we're essential workers, and we didn't miss a beat at the start of the pandemic. We're a highly technologically driven firm. The partnership had a meeting on Monday, and Tuesday morning everybody was staying home and fully connected and working like nothing had happened. Currently, either in construction or in development. We're on projects in New Haven, Norwalk, Hartford, South Windsor, West Hartford. This photograph here is One Park, which is Lexington Partners project, which we actually did design probably 15 months ago, went on hold, and now it's back again, which is fantastic. Stores up around the UConn campus, off campus, South Windsor, TOD, transportation-oriented design in Berlin. And then the high-rise, the 30-story high-rise that you see there is a multifamily in Jersey City, New Jersey, which during this time, even with lockdown, our team had to go there 3 times on site visits. So that's interesting. I had shared this to Tom, and I think I want to get this out to the rest of the people. And I have no allegiance to Boston Properties, Tom. I want to tell you that. This is just something that came up in conversation yesterday with a national engineering firm, another firm that we work with. And one of their partners was alluding to me how impressed he was with what they put together. And I liked what he said to me. He says, I like this as we may only have one chance to get this right. If you're managing a building and you have to make people, safe. And if there's a theme that has come from all of us today, we're talking about consumer confidence. That, we can talk about the stock market is not really being the economy. Consumer confidence, going to work and buying things, that drives everything, right? So I found this to be quite well done. And if you get into the section on air and water quality, it echoes everything that Tom was telling you. And they give a really good game plan of what you should be paying attention. Tom, I'm assuming CRE has something similar, right, that you've also published.
Oh yeah, no, we've got manuals and all kinds of guidelines we're sending out to folks.
Absolutely. So I mean, top companies that are well run, they're taking the lead to do this. Case in point, right now, PS is in 3 different offices with 3 different landlords. I checked today, and each one of those landlords or building owners is doing the minimal of what they have to do. Which, if you read this booklet, this is not the minimal. Okay, so I just want to send that message. So your clients might be looking for something much more stringent. As I said, I'm the optimist. So I kind of look at, we went through hell in our tri-state region. We had to mitigate the exposure, and we all worked through the reopening plans as essential workers, most of us did, and had to learn how to work and live safely. But I'm finding that, as I've mentioned, developers and owners, they're continuing with their plans. Some of them are accessing capital that they might not have opportunity to before. I know it's not always easy, but it is something that is happening. The people I talk to in design and construction, many on this panel, they're eager to show you their talents and what they could do during this time. And what I witness is that they are all putting together their own action plans of how they can assist you, whether it be in the construction side of things, or what Paolo's talking about, in design. I reference a lot of people in the Boston market that have extensive like COVID plans and how they can really help their clients or prospects. So please, if you have a client that needs engagement or help, you reach out to anybody on this panel. They'd be happy to help you. The simple thing would be to look at the efficiencies that are coming from this. Guido was alluding to that a little bit, but there's a lot of technology. I mean, how many people were never on a Zoom meeting, before this happened? Now, it's like everybody is either tired of them or actually looks forward to them, right? But in design and construction, it is a foundation for us. We need to collaborate. We need to talk about what our ideas are, what our challenges are, overcome those challenges. And without that technology, I was thinking back today, if this happened in 1984, what would we be going through right now, right? What would it be like? And I think it'd be a heck of a lot worse. And by having what we have today, I'm not saying it's made it easier, but it certainly has helped on the communication, the collaboration part of it. And I also talked to a variety of national construction companies, and they're all looking at ways to research, invest, or position themselves to work on what Tom was talking about, because they know that they're not going to be, building new medical centers, or they're not necessarily going to be doing huge dormitories at major universities. The work that's going to need to be done is going to be commissioning, retrofitting, and working through these MEP systems so that, once again, we have that consumer confidence, and they're taking their experience from those sectors and bringing it into other sectors. So I went as quickly as I could, Tom. I hope I did okay.
You did great. Thank you, David.
And I'd be happy to offline discuss any of those things in more detail.
Wow. Well, just my initial impression of all of your comments and presentations are, we've got a really wonderful deep bench of experts within our SIOR community. I think there's a phenomenal amount of energy and creativity that all of us are taking advantage of at this point in time to deal with some pretty extenuating circumstances. And I know in my heart, and I think across the panel's hearts, we will persevere. We'll look back at this time and say, wow, this was a challenging time, 2020, but some things habits and practices that are new to us now will become standard going forward. And just the same way that we go through TSA at an airport, perhaps. So I want to thank all of you. We had a few chat questions that came up, although I see that some of the have been chatted back already regarding different technologies and different ways of cleaning air. The one that Dan DeClaire had thrown in there was that Atmos Air is said to neutralize COVID by 99.9%. And Tom Proietti, do you want to speak to that just real quickly? I thought that was kind of interesting, your response.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Whoops. Oh, again, we got to.
Can you hear me?
No.
We're not hearing you well.
Tom, he did provide an answer. I don't know if you see it on your chat.
Yes, I did. I thought it'd be better if he. I thought he could speak to it better than I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he just talks about the fact that he's heard good things about Atmos Air. It's an air treatment which would not replace the UVC sanitation of the coils and added filtration. So essentially is the belt to go with suspenders. No devices have had the opportunity to be truly tested against COVID. So it's because it's so new. So I think, everybody's focused, and I do think that good things are going to come across the board from all of our energies and our focus with this. And everybody's being willing to cooperate and work together. Again, I want to thank all of you for your time. I know there's a phenomenal amount of preparation associated with each of your presentations. And I thank you again. I thank Bernadette Blaze, our SIOR administrator, for coordinating all this. And we very much look forward to our next SIOR weekly chat, which I'm not quite sure of the schedule. We'll find out when we get back. Art, do you have a sense as to what we're coming up with next?
Yeah, so we are segueing into our summer schedule. We're going to take next week off since we're going into the July 4th weekend, long weekend for a lot of folks. But we are going to resume a regular schedule probably every other week throughout the summer. And echoing Tom's comments, you folks are great. I mean, just the energy, and I think it was Dave Brownell mentioned, but you're all the similar comments about an interest to improvise, and we're going to improvise, and we are improvising and coming up with solutions to move forward in our new COVID world. But yeah, thank you again, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We ran a 45-minute time frame, but I think we had an awful lot of good information that was shared. So again, thanks everybody, and I think we're going to sign off at this point.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Tom.
everybody.